The night was dark in the alien city, but the marketplace never slept. Fires burned in iron cages, and the smell of smoke and fear filled the air. Shouts rose from every corner as traders bargained, not for food or goods, but for living beings. This was no ordinary market. This was a slave market. Hidden in the shadows of the galaxy, among the lines of frightened captives, one stood out. She was small, no more than a child, with glowing blue eyes that seemed too bright for her weak body. Chains dug into her thin wrists, and she trembled as buyers passed by. Most ignored her. Some laughed at her size. Others whispered that she was too fragile, too useless to be worth the price. But one man stopped. He was human, and his presence in that alien market drew stares. Humans were rare here, and most thought them too dangerous to deal with. Yet this man walked calmly, his eyes sharp, scanning the cages. When his gaze fell on the child, he paused. The slaver beside her grinned. "Cheap one," the alien said, his voice rough. "Too weak. Won't last long. Buy her if you want, no. Refund when she dies." The human ignored the taunts. He crouched down, looking at the child. Her eyes met his for only a moment before she lowered her head. Certain he would turn away like all the others, but he de-edged single quotes. He rose slowly and said, "I'll take her." The crowd fell silent. Murmurs spread. A human buying a useless alien child. Madness. Some laughed. Others shook their heads. But the slaver only grinned wider and unlocked the chains. "Your loss." The alien muttered, shoving the child forward. She stumbled and nearly fell, too weak to stand properly. The human caught her, steadying her with gentle hands. She flinched. At his touch, expecting pain, instead, his grip was steady but kind. "Come," he whispered. And though she didn't understand all his words, his tone was clear. He wasn't going to hurt her. The slaver pocketed his credits and shouted to the guards, "Let him go. He'll regret it soon enough." The human led the child away, but the market eyes followed. Some with curiosity, others with hunger. The alien traders were not blind. They knew humans were strong. But one man could not protect such a weak little thing for long. Whispers spread like fire through the night. The slaver had let go of a cursed child, and the fool human had taken her. As they moved through the narrow streets, the child tugged at his sleeve. Her voice was small, almost a whisper. "Why? Why me?" He glanced at her, surprised. She spoke his language, broken and trembling, but clear enough, "Because you deserve to be free." He said softly. Her eyes widened, confusion mixing with fear. No one had ever spoken to her like that. To her, freedom was only a word she had heard in stories told by other slaves. She had never believed it could be real. But hope was a dangerous thing in this place. And already danger was closing in. Behind them, two shadows moved. The human noticed. He tightened his grip on the child's hand and pulled her down a darker path. His instincts screamed someone was following. The child stumbled, nearly crying out, but he hushed her quickly. They ducked into an alley where the lights were broken and the smell of rust filled the air. He crouched low, keeping her close. His heart pounded, but his eyes stayed sharp. The shadows passed, slow and searching. He held his breath, holding her tiny hand against his chest to quiet her trembling. For a long moment, they waited in silence. Then, finally, the danger passed. The human exhaled and glanced at the child. She was staring up at him with those glowing blue eyes, still afraid, but now filled with something else, something new. "Trust me," he whispered. She hesitated, but then she nodded, just barely. He pulled a ragged cloak from his pack and wrapped it around her small body. It was too big for her, but it hid her chains and her trembling arms. He lifted her easily and carried her deeper into the night, away from the marketplace. away from the chains that had held her. Yet, even as they vanished into the shadows, the whispers behind them grew. The slavers had seen. The guards had seen. And in a place where freedom was worth nothing, no one simply walked away with stolen flesh. The rescue had begun. But the real danger was only just starting. The market lights faded behind them, but the danger had not. The human carried the child close, her small hands clutching his shirt as if letting go meant death. Around them, the city was alive with noise-drunken shouts. Iron doors slamming, creatures barking from rooftops. But underneath it all was another sound, faint yet sharp. Footsteps. The slavers were hunting. He could hear them, moving like wolves. In the night, their heavy boots striking the stones with purpose. They had seen him walk away with the child. They had let him leave the market, but not the city. No one walked away with a slave, not without blood to pay for it. The human ducked into a narrow passage where broken walls leaned together like crooked teeth. He crouched low, pressing the girl against the cold stone. Her glowing eyes were too brighteny. Hunter could see them in the dark. He pulled the ragged cloak tighter around her face. "Stay quiet," he whispered. Her breathing was fast, shaky. She was not used to kindness, not used to escape. Every sound made her flinch. She expected betrayal, chains, pain. Yet when she looked up at him, her fear shifted. His voice was calm, steady, like a shield in the chaos. The footsteps grew louder. Shadows stretched across the walls. Hunters moved through the street, long rifles slung across their backs, blades at their belts. Their eyes scanned the alleys. One of them muttered something in a tongue the child did not understand, but the human knew enough. They were certain their prey had gone this way. He pressed the child closer to him, one hand covering her mouth. Gently, not in cruelty, but in warning. Her heartbeat raced against his chest. She wanted to cry out, but something inside told her not to. The hunters stopped just a few steps away. One leaned close to the alley, sniffing the air like an animal. The human held still, every muscle tense, waiting for the moment to strike or to run. But a fight here would kill them both. The hunter cursed, spat on the ground, and moved on. The other followed, their boots fading into the distance. The human waited a little longer before releasing his breath. He looked at the child. Her eyes were wide, still glowing faintly, but this time with awe. She had never seen anyone hide her, protect her, risk their life for her. "Safe," he whispered. "For now." But safe was not the same as free. He carried her again, weaving through broken streets, always watching the rooftops, always listening. They reached the edge of the city where the walls rose high and sharp, guarded by towers. Beyond those walls lay the wastelands, a cruel desert of storms and predators. Yet the wastelands were better than this place. At least out there, no chains. Woodreach, the child, tugged at his sleeve. They will follow," she whispered. "Yes," he said. "They will. Why not leave me?" Her voice was thin, filled with fear and shame. "They want me, not you. If you let me go, you can live." He stopped and knelt, setting her gently on her feet. His eyes locked with hers, and his voice was steady, sharp, filled with truth. "I will not leave you. You are free now. Do you understand? Free?" The word struck her like lightning. Free. She had heard it, dreamed it, but never believed it. Now the stranger said it as if it were simple, as if it were real. Tears filled her eyes. But she nodded. He rose and looked toward the wall. Guards walked the ramparts, alien figures with glowing armor, scanning the streets below. Getting through would not be easy. He carried the girl into an abandoned building, broken roof open to the stars. From there, he could see the city stretching. Out fires burning, smoke rising, hunters moving in packs. They were searching, and it was only a matter of time before they found his trail. He studied the wall, the guards, the shadows. There was one weak point in old drainage tunnel, half buried in rubble. Dangerous, but possible. He turned to the child. "Can you walk?" She nodded, though her legs trembled. "Good. We move now." The sound of boots returned closer, sharper. The hunters were near again. No more hiding. They had to run. He pulled her hand, leading her down broken steps and across the empty street. The tunnel was just ahead. Behind them, voices shouted, "There! The human has the girl." The chase erupted. He didn't look back. He pushed forward, heart pounding, carrying her. When her legs failed, the hunters' voices rose, closer and closer, weapons clanging. The tunnel was just ahead, the only chance left. They slipped inside, the darkness swallowing them whole. The girl clung to him, her fear mixed with something else, now trust. For the first time in her life, she believed someone might keep her safe. But behind them, the hunters' footsteps echoed in the tunnel. The escape had only begun, and the shadows were closing in. The tunnel walls dripped with damp water, the air thick with dust and rust. Darkness wrapped around them, broken only by the faint glow of the child's eyes. Her small hand clutched the human's arm tightly as echoes of footsteps followed behind. The hunters were still close, their angry voices bouncing through the stone passage. The human moved quickly but carefully, guiding the child deeper into the tunnel. His boots splashed in shallow water, but his steps made no sound beyond that. He had learned to walk like a shadow, silent and sharp. The child tried to copy him, but her weak legs trembled, and she stumbled more than once. Each stumble echoed too loudly in the tunnel. "Quiet," he whispered, steadying her. "Almost there." She nodded, but fear shook her thin body. They reached a collapsed section where stones had fallen, blocking part of the tunnel. The human pushed aside the smaller rocks, creating just enough space to crawl through. He pulled the girl first, then followed after, covering the opening with rubble again. Now the tunnel grew narrower, colder, and darker. At last, the sounds of the hunters faded. Silence returned, heavy and endless. The girl clung to his side, her breaths quick and uneven. "You are safe," he whispered. She looked up at him with glowing eyes that reflected doubt. "Safe. For now," she said in her small, broken voice. He almost smiled. She was clever, sharper than most children her age. But her words were filled with sadness, the kind only a child who had never known safety could speak. When they finally reached an exit, it opened into ruined tunnels above ground, remnants of an old sewer system. The human scanned the broken stone and rusty iron, then helped her sit against the wall. She looked exhausted, her arms shaking, her eyes heavy with hunger. From his pack, he pulled a small metal tin. Inside was dry bread and a flask of water. He broke the bread in half and offered it to her. The girl's eyes flickered with confusion. She stared at the food as if it were a trick, as if the moment she touched it, he would take it away and laugh. Her hands stayed frozen in her lap. "Eat," he said gently. She shook her head. "If I eat, you will want something. Later." Her voice was small, trembling, but her meaning was clear. She had learned in the market that kindness always came with a price. The human's face hardened. Not at her, but at the thought of what she had suffered. He broke a piece of bread and put it into his own mouth. Slowly, he chewed, then swallowed. He drank from the flask and set it beside her. "See," he said softly, "no tricks, just food." Her glowing eyes widened. She reached out slowly, still shaking, and picked up the bread. Her first bite was tiny, careful. Then another, faster, hungrier. Soon the bread was gone, and she drank the water until her small hands shook. Less when she finished, she leaned back against the wall, eyes half closed. For the first time, warmth touched her face. "Why? Why help me?" she asked quietly. The human sat beside her, resting against the stone wall. His voice was calm, but filled with weight. "'Cause no one else would. 'Cause you deserve more than chains." She studied him with wide eyes. No one had ever spoken to her that way. No one had ever looked at her as if she mattered. Her small voice broke the silence again. "What? What is your name?" He hesitated for a moment, then told her. His name echoed softly in the tunnel, and she whispered it back as if testing its strength. "My name is Lyra," she added after a long pause. The bond began there too. Names shared in the dark, a small step toward trust. But trust was not built in a single moment. As the night grew colder, Lyra shivered. The human pulled his cloak and wrapped it around her shoulders. She leaned against him, still nervous, but she did not pull away. Her small body finally relaxed, her breathing slowing as exhaustion claimed. He sat awake, listening to the distant sounds of the city above. Hunters were still searching, their voices carried faintly in the wind. He knew this rest would not last long. Yet as he looked at the child sleeping beside him, he felt a weight settle in his chest. He had rescued her, not just from chains, but from despair. Now she trusted him, even if only a little. And that meant he could not fail her. When the first light of dawn touched the broken stones, he stood and lifted her gently into his arms. She stirred but did not wake, her face peaceful for the first time. The journey ahead would be long. Slavers, hunters, and dangers beyond the city walls would not stop. But as he carried her toward the wastelands, he knew something had changed. They were no longer strangers. They were no longer just rescuer and captive. They were something else, now protector and child, guardian and hope, and together they would have to fight to survive. The sun rose over the wastelands like a burning sword. Heat waves shimmered across endless sand, and the air was heavy with dust. The human stood at the broken edge of the city walls, the child in his arms. Behind them, the city of chains still slept, but soon the hunters would rise again. Ahead of them stretched only danger desert storms, wild beasts, and no sign of safety. He set Lyra on her feet, though her legs trembled. She looked out at the vast emptiness, her glowing eyes reflecting the sun. Fear crept across her face. We cannot cross," she whispered. He crouched beside her, his tone steady. "We must. Out there is freedom. In there is only chains." She lowered her head. Freedom sounded like a dream. But the desert looked like death. The human adjusted his pack and wrapped the cloak tighter around her shoulders. Then he held out his hand. "Trust me. One step at a time." Hesitating, Lyra placed her small hand in his. And so the journey began. They walked through the burning sand, the sun striking like fire. Every step was heavy, but the human never slowed. Lyra stumbled often, her weak legs sinking into the soft ground, but he lifted her when she could not walk, carrying her on his back. Hours passed. The desert gave no mercy. Wind howled, throwing sharp grains of sand against their skin. Lyra buried her face in his shoulder, holding tightly. She wanted to cry, but no tears came, only fear. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice small against the storm. "Somewhere safe," he answered, though he was not sure such a place existed. That night, they found shelter beneath the skeleton of an ancient structure, perhaps a watchtower long fallen. It's broken. Walls gave them shade, and he built a small fire with scraps of dry wood. The flames flickered weakly against the desert wind. Lyra sat close, her knees hugged to her chest. The firelight reflected in her eyes, mixing with the faint glow that was always there. For a long time, she was silent. Then she whispered, "Why? Do you not fear me?" He looked at her, confused. "Why would I fear you?" Her small hands tightened around her knees. "The slavers, they said I am cursed, that my eyes bring death, that no one should keep me alive." The human's jaw tightened. He remembered the whispers in the market. It ignored them then, and he ignored them now. "Your eyes are not a curse," he said firmly. "They are a light, a gift." Lyra blinked, surprised. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Her glowing eyes filled with something new, something warm. That night, she ate the food he gave her without hesitation. She even smiled, faint and small, when he told her a simple story of earth-full blue oceans and green forests. She could not imagine such a place, but the way he spoke made her believe it might be real. The next day, their journey grew harder. The desert floor split into sharp cliffs, jagged rocks cutting their path. Lyra's small feet bled, and she winced with every step. Without a word, the human lifted her again, carrying her across the stones. But they were not alone. From high above, dark shapes moved against the sun. Desert predators, winged beasts with wide claws and sharp teeth. Their screeches echoed as they circled. Lyra clung to the human's neck, whispering in fear. "They see us," she said. "Yes," he replied, gripping a broken piece of pipe like a weapon. His eyes scanned the sky. "But they will not take us." The beasts dove, their wings cutting the air like blades. The humans swung the pipe, striking one across the jaw. It crashed into the sand, hissing. Another swooped low, claws reaching for Lyra, but the human spun, shielding her with his body. The claw slashed his arm, blood spilling. Yet his grip never loosened. With fire in his eyes, he fought them back, striking again and again until the beasts scattered into the sky, their screeches fading. Lyra looked at him, her glowing eyes wide. With shock, "You are hurt," she whispered. He wrapped cloth around his arm, tightening it against the wound. "It is nothing," he said calmly. "You are safe. That is what matters." She stared at him, trembling. No one had ever fought for her before. No one had ever bled for her. As night fell again, they camped in the shadow of a canyon. The stars burned bright above, endless and cold. Lyra lay close beside him, her head resting against his arm. "Why do you not give up?" she asked softly. His voice was steady, unshaken. "Because giving up means losing you, and I will not lose you." For the first time in her short life, Lyra felt more than safety. She felt hope. The journey home had only begun, and the road would be filled with danger. But for the first time, she believed they might survive it because she was no longer alone. The canyon walls rose high on both sides, sharp as knives, casting long shadows across the desert floor. The human and Lyra moved carefully along the narrow path, the sound of their footsteps echoing between the rocks. For a short time, it seemed quiet, almost safe. But the human knew better. Silence in the wasteland was never true silence. He stopped, raising his hand. Lyra froze beside him, her small body tense. Her glowing eyes searched the cliffs, uncertain. "What is it?" she whispered. He didn't answer, only listened. Then he heard the faint grind of metal against stone, the soft echo of boots above them. Someone was tracking them. Hunters, the slavers, had not given up. They had unleashed trackers to follow their trail, skilled killers who could cross desert and rock without rest. The human's jaw tightened. He had expected this, but he had hoped for more time. "Stay close," he whispered. They pressed forward, but the hunters closed in. A sudden crack rang out, a rifle shot echoing through the canyon. The bullet struck the rock near the humans, head sending shards flying. Lyra screamed, but he pulled her down behind a boulder, shielding her with his body. Another shot rang out. Dust exploded near their feet. "They found us," she whispered in terror. "Yes," he said calmly, checking the ground around them. His eyes searched for a way out. Fighting head-on meant death. He needed to be smarter. The canyon twisted into a maze of narrow passages. The human guided Lyra through them, always staying low, always keeping to the shadows. The hunter shouted from the cliffs above, their voices sharp. "Bring the girl alive," one called. "Kill the man." Lyra's small hand tightened around his. Her breath shook, her fear heavy in the air. But he didn't slow. They reached a dead-end stone rising in front of them, impossible to climb quickly. Lyra gasped, pulling back. "We are trapped." The human studied the cliff, his eyes narrowing. Trapped, yes, but not defeated. He scanned the ground and found broken wood and loose stones scattered along the canyon floor. An idea sparked. He knelt beside Lyra. "Listen to me. No matter what happens, stay low, stay quiet, and do not move until I tell you." She nodded, though fear shone in her glowing eyes. The hunters entered the canyon, their rifles ready. They moved slowly, confident, certain their prey had nowhere to run. One sneered, raising his weapon. "End of the road, human." But the human was ready. He struck the rocks with his pipe, sending a sharp echo through the canyon. At the same time, he hurled stones to the far side, making it sound like movement. The hunters turned instantly, firing toward the noise. Bullets sparked against the stone, the sound of gunfire filling the canyon. In that moment of distraction, the human moved. He leaped from cover, charging at the nearest hunter. His pipe struck with brutal force, knocking the rifle from the aliens. Hands, the fight was fast, brutal steel against steel. Fists against flesh. The second hunter swung his blade, but the human ducked, driving his elbow into the alien's jaw. The strike sent the creature stumbling. Lyra watched from her hiding place, her heart racing. Fear told her to stay still, but something else, something new made her whisper softly, "You can win." The words gave him strength. The human fought. With everything he had, not for glory, not for himself, but for the child who now believed in him. He disarmed one hunter, sending the rifle skidding across the rocks. With a final strike, he knocked the other to the ground. But victory came at a cost. His arm bled from a blade wound, his breathing heavy. The hunters lay broken, but he knew more would come. Slavers never stopped until they reclaimed what they believed was theirs. He wiped the blood from his arm, then turned to Lyra. She ran to him, her glowing eyes filled with both fear and awe. "You fought them," she whispered. "You fought?" "Them all." He knelt, resting his hand on her shoulder. "I will fight every hunter in this desert if I must. I will never let them take you." For the first time, she believed him fully. Her fear did not vanish, but it changed into something stronger: trust. They left the canyon quickly, moving through the shadows as the sun began to fall. The wasteland stretched ahead, endless and merciless. But now, Lyra no longer walked behind him. She walked beside him, her small steps matching his, her hand never leaving his. The hunters would return, stronger and more furious than before. But the human had proven one thing: he was not just a rescuer. He was her shield, her protector, her only chance at freedom, and with each step into the wasteland. The bond between them grew unbreakable. The desert night was colder than stone. The fire burned low, throwing long shadows against the canyon. While the human sat with his back to the rock, his wounded arm wrapped in cloth, his eyes fixed on the horizon. Every sound made him tense: the howl of distant beasts, The whisper of the wind, but nothing was as dangerous as the truth he did not yet know. Beside him, Lyra lay under his cloak, her small body curled tightly. She pretended to sleep, but her glowing eyes betrayed her. Oh, they shimmered faintly in the dark, bright even when the fire died. At last, she spoke. Her voice was soft, hesitant. Why do they chase us so hard? Why not let me go? The human glanced at her, his face unreadable. Because slavers do not forget what they lose. And you are not just another child. They fear you, or maybe they want you for something else. Lyra lowered her head, her small hands twisting the cloak. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, as if her heart could no longer carry the weight, she whispered, "They chase me because of what I am." He frowned. "What do you mean?" Her glowing eyes rose to meet his, filled with a sadness too heavy for someone so young. "My people are gone. Long ago, my world was destroyed in war. Only a few of us survived. The slavers found me when I was very small. They said my bloodline was special, that inside me was a power they could sell to kings and armies." The human's chest tightened. A power that explained the whispers, the hunters, the endless chase. "What kind of power?" he asked. Her voice shook. "I don't know. Sometimes, when I am afraid, things happen. Lights, storms, even fire. Once, I made a slaver's weapon break just by wishing it. They feared me, but they also wanted me alive. They said I was the last of a royal line, a child who could command the old energy of my people." She hugged herself, trembling. "But I don't want power. I don't want to be a weapon. I just want to be free." The human watched her in silence, his mind heavy with the truth. This was no ordinary rescue. He had not only freed a child. He had freed the last heir of a fallen world. A girl hunted not for chains, but for what lived inside her. Finally, he spoke, his voice calm and steady. "Listen to me, Lyra. You are not a weapon. You are not a curse. You are a child, and you deserve to live, not as property, not as power, but as yourself." Her eyes widened, glimmering with tears. No one had ever said such words to her. No one had ever cared about her beyond her bloodline. "Do you really believe that?" she asked. "I do," he answered without hesitation. "And I will protect you until my last breath." The bond between them grew stronger that night, but danger was never far. Before dawn, voices echoed across the desert, distant yet sharp. The hunters had not given up. Their torches glowed like red stars, moving closer through the wasteland. The human stood, tightening the straps of his pack. His wounds still burned, but he ignored the pain. "We must go." Lyra rose quickly, though her legs shook. Fear darkened her eyes, but behind it burned something else, determination, as they moved through the rocky paths. The first light of morning touched the sky. The wasteland stretched endless before them. But now the journey felt heavier. The human carried the weight of his promise, and Lyra carried the weight of her secret. The hunters' voices grew louder. "Find the girl. Do not let her escape." The human's grip tightened on his pipe, his eyes scanning the cliffs. They were coming faster now, more organized, more desperate. Lyra stumbled beside him, whispering, "They will not stop. They will chase us forever." He crouched, lifting her onto his back again. "Then we will make them regret it." As they climbed toward higher ground, the hunters closed in. Shots cracked, echoing across the canyon. Dust and stone exploded near their feet. The human ran harder, his muscles burning, his breath sharp. Lyra clung to him, her glowing eyes flashing with fear. And then it happened. A bullet screamed toward them, too fast to dodge. Lyra's small hand stretched out without thought, her voice breaking into a cry. The bullet froze in the air, spinning, before dropping harmlessly to the sand. The human stopped in shock, his eyes wide. Lyra's chest rose and fell rapidly, her small face pale with terror. I didn't mean to, I didn't, but there was no time for questions. The hunters had seen. Their shouts grew frantic. She has the power. Take her alive. The human looked at Lyra, then back at the hunters. His decision was instant. Your secret is safe with me, he whispered. But now they will chase harder than ever. Lyra's tears glimmered in the light of dawn, but she nodded. For the first time, she knew he had seen her power and had not turned away. They ran again, their bond stronger than fear. Yet, the truth was clear. The child was more than a rescued slave. She was the key to something greater, something the galaxy would kill to control. And now, the journey home was no longer just about survival. It was about destiny. The morning sun rose like fire across the wasteland, burning the sky in shades of red and gold. The human carried Lyra on his back, his steps heavy but unbroken. Behind them, the hunters' voices echoed louder and louder, closing in like wolves. The desert gave them no mercy, no place to hide, no time to rest. Lyra clung tightly, her glowing eyes filled with fear. She whispered, "They will not stop. They want me forever." The human's voice was steady. "Then we make them stop." They reached the edge of a canyon, where sharp cliffs fell into a deep ravine. There was no bridge, no path across, only broken rocks and the roar of the wind below. The hunters poured into view behind them, weapons raised, shouts filling the air. That the human set Lyra down behind a boulder. His grip tightened on his broken pipe, the only weapon he had left. Blood still stained his arm, but his eyes burned with determination. "Stay down," he told her. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "They want me, not you. If I face them, maybe they will leave you." He knelt, his voice sharp. "Listen to me. You are not theirs. You are not a weapon. You are a child, and I swore to protect you." Tears filled her glowing eyes, but she nodded. She knew he would fight, even if it cost him his life. The hunters advanced, rifles aimed. Their leader stepped forward, sneering. "Give us the girl, human. Walk away, and we may spare you." The human raised his weapon, his stance unshaken. "You'll have to kill me first." The leader grinned. "That can be arranged." The canyon erupted in gunfire. Bullets screamed through the air, striking the rocks around them. The human moved like a storm, rolling between cover, striking with brutal precision. His pipe smashed into one hunter's jaw, sending him crashing into the sand. He grabbed another's weapon and turned it against them, firing until the rifle clicked empty. But there were too many. Shots tore into his side, grazing his skin, burning pain across his ribs. He stumbled, blood dripping, yet he refused to fall. Each time the hunters closed in, he struck harder, fighting not for himself, but for the child who now watched him with wide, terrified eyes. "Run!" He shouted to Lyra, but she did not run. She stepped forward, her small body shaking, her eyes glowing brighter than ever. Fear turned into strength, and strength turned into fire. The hunters laughed when they saw her, thinking she was helpless. But then the air shifted. Lyra raised her hands, and the desert itself seemed to awaken. The wind howled, sharp as blades. Stones lifted from the ground, spinning in the air like a storm of knives. The hunters froze in shock, their weapons trembling. Impossible. One gasped. Her voice rang out, trembling yet strong. "I am not your weapon. I am not your slave. Leave us." The storm exploded. Rocks and wind crashed into the hunters, throwing them back. Weapons shattered, armor cracked, screams filled the canyon. The leader tried to fire, but his rifle melted. In his hands, sparks flying. The human watched, stunned but proud. He had seen her power before, but now she was no longer afraid of it. She was in control. When the storm ended, the hunters lay scattered across the ground, broken and defeated. Silence fell, broken only by the wind. Lyra collapsed to her knees, her body trembling. The human rushed to her, catching her before she fell. She looked up at him, tears shining in her glowing eyes. "I didn't want to hurt them," she whispered. He brushed her hair back, his voice gentle. "You didn't hurt them. You stopped them. You saved us both." She clung to him, crying softly into his chest. For the first time, she no longer felt cursed. She felt alive. The wasteland stretched quiet. Now, no hunters left to chase them. The human carried Lyra once more, his steps heavy but filled with hope. The journey was not over. They still had to find her home, still had to face whatever waited beyond the desert. But the hardest part was behind them. As the sun dipped low, they reached the edge of the wasteland. In the distance, far across the horizon, a faint light shimmered. Lyra's eyes widened as she whispered, "That is it. My home." The human looked at her and smiled faintly. "Then, let's finish the journey." She rested her head on his shoulder, her glowing eyes soft with peace. For the first time in her life, she believed she had a future. Not as a slave, not as a weapon, but as a child free, protected, and no longer alone. Together, they walked toward the light, two shadows against the endless desert. Their bond had carried them through fear, blood, and death. Now it would carry them home.